afternoon, good evening to everyone who has tuned in to our webinar today. On behalf of Thai Dubai, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome each of you here. As you can see in the visuals, we have now done over 40 virtual events over the last 8 months, and we do hope these sessions have been valuable and helpful for many of you. To give some insights to those who don't know much about Thai, Thai is this amazing organization that started in the Silicon Valley in 1992 by a handful of people and has now grown to more than 60 chapters in more than 16 countries. The most amazing part of this organization is that it is run on the generosity and passion of many, many successful entrepreneurs who are leaders in their own right. They have succeeded in their journey of challenges and learnings as an entrepreneur and as a business. Some of them have gone on to build world-class companies, and the others are en route to that. Called as charter members, they're willing to give back their valuable time and knowledge to the entrepreneurial community and ecosystem to build it further. They create time out of their very busy schedules to support aspiring as well as newer entrepreneurs and businesses on their journey to increase the chances of success. A shout out to all the charter members and especially the ones in the audience now. Thai Dubai was established over 18 years back to support the ecosystem in this region and has been able to help multiple entrepreneurs on their respective journeys in many different ways. With a global reach and local focus, at Thai Dubai, we run several events and programs, which many of you may find valuable. The mentorship program, the Thai Women program, Thai Young Entrepreneur program for the university students. And thanks to the pandemic, we're able to reach a wider audience in the MENA region now. The easiest way to be a part of this community is by liking us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to access all our events and programs. We publish all our events across the platforms, so do take the time to find us as Thai Dubai everywhere. I would also like to acknowledge and thank all of Thai Dubai's sponsors and partners who continually support us in bringing more to you. Moving on to the session for today, payment gateway solutions. One of those things every business cannot live without now. Is it complicated? Well, it may depend on how much you know about your options and also what could possibly be some of the challenges and limitations you know you need to tackle before you make your choices. To introduce a speaker for today's workshop, I would like to call on our Thai Dubai Charter member, that fintech guy who knows pretty much anything and everything on payments and solutions. A second generation fintech entrepreneur, a tech investor, fund advisor, mentor, music lover, chai maker, the list goes on. Without further ado, Gaurav, please set the stage on fire.
Thank you so much, Cicely. I think I couldn't introduce myself like that if I had a year to plan it. You're far too kind. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to Punit for your time.
Thank you, Gaurav. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I'd like to set the stage for today very quickly because I'm sure of the 50 participants that are already with us here today, many people would like to get into asking the questions that they have for Punit, very specifically related to them. So I'll keep this as short as possible. When looking at payment gateway services and the requirements for setting up, it's always in context. First of all, it's about the type of business that you're running, the entity that you have, and the region that you're in. Unfortunately, the Middle East region does not concur to formalize standards yet on a unified policy like we see in the United States or Europe. That has its advantages and it has its disadvantages for speed and regulation, as well as the commercial aspects when it comes to processes and costs associated with being an entrepreneur that needs a payment gateway to service your own customers. So putting that into context, I think we're very lucky to have someone like Punit here who's actually been part of the payment gateway setup and establishment since day one in this region. So he operates in a number of countries. He operates with a number of programs, and he's always involved with a number of businesses from a perspective of what can we do next? What's the next type of customer for him that they can serve? And in fact, that causes a ripple effect across the market, because while Punit may have his hat on from PayTabs, which we know very well, he's very much like me, an entrepreneur at heart. So always trying to solve a problem. And it's not always straightforward to navigate it. So again, thank you, Punit, for being here. We look forward to your expertise, essentially your navigation, very specifically to types of businesses that require maybe a little bit more complexity or less complexity in navigating how to obtain services, what they should be aware of when setting it up, and perhaps where they need to focus less on as a business setting up as well. So, we're very, very, very happy that you're here, and we've now got 55 attendees, so I'm sure we're going to be asking a range of questions. So with that, Punit, thank you very much for your time again, and let you run with the show yourself.
Thank you so much, Gaurav and Cecily, for hosting me here. It's always a pleasure. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending this session. So from a payment perspective, I've been working in a couple of payment processing companies and payment gateways. So when you talk about an ecosystem for an online website or an e-commerce website, the first refer, people have various line of businesses which can be either in products or services. So the first thing what we always do is picking the right e-commerce platform. And probably let me share my screen so I'll be able to.
Punit, if you want me to share it, let me know. I have it ready as well, whichever way you like.
I think I'll share it because it will be much easier for navigating.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
In the meantime, I can do an audience survey and we can find out who all are the people here. Shall I launch that?
Yes, please do that.
So I'm sharing yeah. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, some aspiring. We have a lot of majorities from the e-commerce industry, also from retail, online, F&B, grocery online, and general as well.
Amazing. So I can actually talk a little bit on the tech side as well.
Yeah, I guess.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Cecily. Cool. So as you all can see my screen, typically the reason why we all have started e-commerce is the ease of customers, where you talk about a card not present. So a major difference between a card present and a card not present transaction is when you present your card in front of a store, which is an offline transaction or a brick and mortar transaction, and you tap your card or you enter your card or you swipe a card, that's basically called as a card present transaction. Now, when a customer goes to a website to either buy a product or services, he basically goes online, chooses the buy now option, clicks on the buy now button, gets a payment page. If he likes the payment page, he makes the payment. If he doesn't like the payment page, he just switches off that particular page, and that's a bounce rate. So typically that's a card not present transaction in an e-commerce or typically an electronic transaction. So you always have to understand from the payment gateway perspective, it's always a CNP, which is a card not present transaction. Now, this is a quick survey which I had done before, where today 35% internet users buy online from outside their home country. And obviously the cross-border trade usage has been increasing. So people buying dates, people buying saris from India, people buying dates from Middle East, and people exporting. That's more of a trade export. Now, most of the aspiring entrepreneurs, as I see 33% people are already an entrepreneur, have an e-commerce venture, will always think that I want to go global, I want to expand in other countries. But obviously when you expand in other countries, you have to look on the shipping side of things. You have to also understand what are the currencies which you have to select, so and so forth. So probably I'll go through that in much more details later. But these are the typical line of businesses which I typically see when I see the applications: clothing, footwear, consumer electronics, books, health, beauty, jewelry, sport, leisure, home. So they are all FMCG, or I would say fast mover consumer goods. And you also have retail. And then probably you have services sector, and then you have insurance, or so you have either GUIE, which is government utility insurance education. You create a marketplace for that, or you have a specific particular store which is more of e-commerce on retail. And then you also might have a QSR, which is a quick service restaurant, which comes under horeca category. So typically, as per the schemes, they have distributed typical line of businesses in low risk and high risk. 49 line of businesses have a specific code in the card standards, which is called as a line of business, or a MCC code, which is the merchant category code. So basically, when you are into the low risk segment, you go for applying a payment gateway, submit your application, and then you probably get a payment gateway. And then you'll have customers who can either pay through their card or pay through a local payment or a local debit card. There's a bit of a delay. Sorry, guys. So this is the same quick tam sem som. I'll not go into much more details, but I'll specifically go on choosing the right payment gateway or choosing the right payment method. So firstly, when you launch an e-commerce store, what you have to identify is finding the right platform. People talk about Shopify, people talk about Magento, and there are a lot of e-commerce shopping carts, and there are a lot of people who customize it for you as well, typically on OpenCart, typically on WooCommerce. But the first tip I would say, when you want to choose a payment gateway or an entire end-to-end ecosystem, is keep it simple and stupid. Some of the people think that everything is easy, but at the end of the day, think from a customer's perspective. When he goes for an entire end-to-end experience, and when he chooses pay option, what is the experience from your perspective? And I would say 50 to 60% of the cases, we always rely on our tech developer, and he will always say that the entire product is perfect, the end-to-end user journey is good. But my recommendation always has been to try it yourself, see the entire flow, and make sure that you have a better user flow and checkout experience. What do you mean by that is the experience should never be broken. Why you want to keep it simple is the more the seamless experience, the better the success rate, which means if you have 100 customers going to your website, trying to purchase a product, add to cart, view cart, and finally order review page and click on buy. And when he tries to select the pay option, you should always make sure that he is not redirected to a broken experience. A lot of people try to just have a simple API connected, click on pay, and then you have another page which is not looking like your page. So the first and foremost thing is spend a lot of time in understanding what are the features what you get from a payment gateway. Now, it does not mean that rates are always something and we negotiate with the payment gateways that, your rates are high, but you always have to understand which experience is better. And I'll give you an example. I had a merchant 6 months back. He used to work with another payment gateway, and he asked me, why are you different from others? I said, I'm not cheap, but at the end of the day, what matters is experience. My end-to-end experience is simple, and one or two things what you have to do on your website to make it more credible. And probably I will tell you in the next slides how you want to make it a better page and a better seamless experience. And finally, the entire checkout flow. Now, when you actually make 100 transactions, and out of that 100 transactions, only 20 or 30 people really like to buy from you, is not only because of the cost effectiveness, but also from your experience perspective. So the biggest advantage is to either add 2 3 logos of Visa, Mastercard. We accept payments from Visa, Mastercard, which are the most prominent card schemes, American Express, and more local payment options in the regions. And when you actually add it on your landing pages that we accept payments from this, and this, then your credibility automatically increases. Then you actually track the user journey, where your users are coming from. In some countries, lot of payments happen through a local debit card system. Let's take an example. You have countries like Saudi, you have countries like Kuwait, you have countries like Oman, where Saudi uses Mada, which is the local debit card, Oman uses Oman Net, and Kuwait uses Kuwait Net, which is KNet. Now, 80%, almost 80% of transactions are routed through that particular payment scheme. So the most important thing is to first bring that particular payment option and display that to a user coming from Saudi. Now, you can have hundreds of payment options, but what is important is where the customer is coming from. If the customer is coming from Saudi, he doesn't even care that you also have a KNet option because he's not from Kuwait. So you always have to pick and choose the right payment methods for his particular country. So probably we'll go through that in much more details. But then also more importantly, when you actually design an e-commerce website, I always recommend you to go with a guest checkout experience as well. Most of the people think that having the user base is always better, but you also have to understand that if your particular product is 30 dirhams or 20 dirhams and he wants to just quickly buy it, don't expect him to fill a 60 pages row with your first name, last name, shipping address, billing address. He just wants to go ahead with a guest checkout or a third party authorization. So if you have not implemented a third party authorization, which means sign in using Google, sign in using Facebook, or sign in using Instagram, you always have to make sure that this particular third party authorization has to be done. So when a customer goes to the payment options, don't force him to fill 60 things. And that's a small request, because if you're expecting to grow your business, which everyone wants to, you always have to first grab the attention with 9 touch points. Now, that 9 touch points are: first is you contact them, make your experience simple. Second is your user journey should be seamless. Third is you need to have a guest checkout experience. Fourth is the 6 mantras in an e-commerce is the first name, the last name, the address, the phone number, the email address. These are the top things. And then obviously the shipping address. Billing address is usually captured from a payment side because there is an AVS check done, which is an address verification system. But usually these are the 6 parameters which you have to capture. Out of the other 9 touch points, probably I can take 4 hours, but we have a limited time. Uh, the biggest points is the end-to-end experience by making it more user friendly in terms of look and feel. So if you have a logo of your website and a color scheme, make sure to choose a payment gateway which gives you a CSS customization framework. And you can have a simple iframe which where the customer feels that he is doing a payment on your particular page. The seventh thing is to have an SSL always, which is a secure socket layer, which will charge, you'll be paying around $50 a year, or sometimes it is $8 a month. So you can actually find an SSL provider from your domain registries and have an SSL, which is a mandatory thing. The moment you have an SSL, it builds more credibility and it also helps you for cybersecurity. The last touch point, which is the most important one, is to track where the user is coming from. Probably you would not have a Facebook or a digital marketing specialist, but all of your websites by default have an analytics section. You can always identify where your customers are coming from. And you always have to customize the experience of the customer by selecting the currency where he is coming from. Most important thing, don't expect me to go to the website and on the right top corner I actually click and choose the processing currency. If your customer or you see that this IP is coming from Saudi, by default it should be Saudi riyals. If it is coming from Kuwait, from Dubai, by default, it should be dirhams, and so on and so forth. And if the IP is not coming from specific countries where your currencies are, by default, you show them the home currency. And if you see that there is an international customer browsing through your website, you always have to have a multi-currency e-commerce payment option. Most of the payment gateways will not be able to give you that. But today, in this part of the world, you can get a multi-currency payment option from any of your payment gateways or any of your acquiring banks. The more the processing currencies, the better it is. So what's the difference between a processing currency and a settlement currency? Processing currency is the currency which a customer chooses and his card is authorized. Or I would say in simple terms, his card is processed with that particular currency. For example, you as a customer have a card issued from UAE and you go to a Turkish airline website. Turkish Airlines would not have AED, they would have Turkish lira. You as a customer, even though you have a AED card, you will end up paying in Turkish lira because the processing currency, what the Turkish airline guys have, is Turkish lira. So that is the processing currency which you have to always choose based on finding who the customer is. And the settlement currencies are the currency where you're expecting your money to be settled. Many e-commerce companies, successful e-commerce companies, which I have dealt with for the last 12 years, they always have multiple settlement currencies. The moment you create a corporate bank account, 100% make sure you take by default three currencies: your home currency, an international currency, either a USD or a euro, and the third currency would either be a Saudi Riyal or Kuwait or wherever your customers are. Always ensure you have 3 to 4 settlement currencies from day one when you start. Focus on your home currency customers first, but the moment you show that you have more customers or more currencies, you attract the international customers. And if you have three settlement currencies, the banks will definitely be able to settle to you in a like to like currency model. Never spend money on FX conversion. The biggest challenge for all the entrepreneurs is the payment gateways and the banks will say, you know, our rates are a bit lower than others, but you always have to test the end-to-end transaction till you don't receive the money in your bank account. That's the biggest transparency. What you have to first identify yourself. Don't rely on others' judgment. Please make sure that you understand what you are paying and what you are getting in your bank account. That is the biggest advantage, where you try to hedge your particular currency pairs and make sure that if one particular currency what you have selected and what a customer has processed, you try to get that particular currency amount in the same settlement currency. If you have a customer paying in AED, you always have to have an AED bank account so that you get the money in AED and you don't get the money in other currencies, because there is an FX element which you will not even realize. After 1 year, because you are startups, you will not have an auditor and an accountant. Then you will realize, oh, I end up paying 5% or 7% extra. How did that happen? So from day one, make sure your math in terms of an end-to-end transaction is very clear. I'll take a quick 1 minute pause if anyone has questions. Or Cecily, do you want me to continue?
So we don't have any questions right now, but I just want to tell the audience, if there's any specific Q&A, please put it. We can either address it at the end, or if there's anything specific to what Punit is sharing on the screen, then he will address it as we go.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this. So probably once you have questions, just feel free to put the questions and then we'll get that. I'll try to wind up my discussion in the next 12 to 13 minutes. And then for the last 20 minutes roughly, I'll be able to answer your questions. So factors to choose a payment gateway. which gateways are better, which shopping carts you've chosen. It's the same things what I've told you now. Now, what are the other parameters what you have to always understand? From a payment gateway perspective, you always have to ensure that your shopping cart dashboard and the payment gateway dashboard have a common synergy. What does that mean? The moment a transaction is completed from your shopping cart and the payment is processed, instantly your dashboard of your shopping cart needs to be updated on a real-time basis. That is basically called as an instant payment notification, which is called as a callback response. The moment a transaction is completed on a payment gateway, you have to ensure that your particular shopping cart gets the same transaction on a real time, whether the transaction is declined, whether the transaction has an issue, or whether there is another problem, or whether the transaction is completed. The payment pages should be customized, and then you always have to ensure that when you actually choose an e-commerce shopping cart, the most important thing is to see is which are the payment plugins available readily. Don't spend money on building a new payment plugin if you have chosen another shopping cart which is not even existing in this region. To give you an example, I had a very interesting use case of a merchant where he was trying to use Squarespace. Squarespace is one of the top-notch shopping carts which has a very good design, customizable journey, and it's similar to Shopify. And lot of people who are into accessories prefer either Shopify or Squarespace. He was struggling for the last 6 months just to get a payment plugin because Squarespace exclusively had only a payment gateway which was not present in our region. So when you choose a e-commerce shopping cart, make sure that there are ready-made plugins available. The first question when you choose a payment gateway, you ask more than 4 to 5 questions. And the first question is, do you support this particular shopping cart? Do you support Magento with the version number? Because every version has a different module. Please don't first choose a payment gateway and then start integrating and waste your time. Make sure that you do your homework, speak to all of them, and get your concepts clear. What are the currencies you process? That is the first question. Never start it, what are the rates you are giving me? That is the last question which I will always ask. What are the processing currencies, what you can process? What do you already have a callback URL, which is an IPN, instant payment notification? Does your payment gateway support my particular shopping cart? Number 4, does your payment gateway have a module which is seamless where I can add my iframe and I can add my logos and colors so that the customers feel it's an easy, seamless experience? And the last question is, do you have a real-time dashboard with various reportings? Now, I'll give you an example. I had a merchant a couple of months back, and they were processing in 6 countries, in 6 different acquiring banks. One of the payment gateways, I'll not name any of them and not even the merchant, said that you have to create 6 merchant accounts because our payment gateway does not allow you to have a multi-processing dashboard. So basically, this particular merchant had to create 6 different accounts to track 6 different banks, to track 6 different settlement currencies. So the last question, what you ask to a payment gateway, when you even start your initial findings is, which are, can your platform process multi-currency or multi-processor in a single mid, in a single merchant account? So a single store ID can have multiple terminals, and each and every terminal can either have a currency or can either have a particular acquiring bank. So that are the questions. And once you have this tick box, all of them, which are the bare minimum things what you need, then you see the payment integration, whether the module supports what you are asking, whether things are working fine from the testing side. If you are comfortable from the testing, then you actually ask the rates and then tell them that, this is what I'm expecting. So never get into a rate from a bank and then you end up paying 5% more on an FX fee. So always ensure that this particular things are captured before even choosing any payment gateway. So these are the typical solutions I would say. Uh, so if you are into travel, fashion, or services, and you don't have a website, this is a very interesting slide. Uh, you don't have a website, and you still need to accept payments online. Typically, you are a visa service company, and you have a small shop, and you have customers out of India, out of other countries to issue UAE visa, for example. You don't need a full-fledged e-commerce shopping cart. You would not even spend 200 or 300 dirhams or even $1,000 to build it. You would rather ask the particular payment gateway that do you have a pay page option, which means you actually just create a link, send the link in an email or WhatsApp or message. People click on the link, they have your customizable page which looks like an invoice. They click on a pay button and the payment is completed. This typically happens for products less than 20. If you have products less than 20 roughly, you should not even invest a lot of money in building a super sophisticated shopping cart. You would rather start with an e-invoicing option and have a basic HTML website, which will not even cost you more than $100. If you are a hotel or a consumer product, you have a simple HTML website. You really don't need an entire iframes. You don't need a lot of customizations because you just have limited products with limited uh, inventory. You just go for a full redirect. But again, the redirection, which means when someone clicks on a pay button, he's redirected to a new payment gateway page. The look and feel should always look as if it's your page. Experience should never be broken. There are researches which says if the experience is broken, 63%, roughly 63 to 65% transactions fail because the customer doesn't have confidence and he just shuts down the browser, and it's an opportunity lost. When you are a retail or a consumer products and you have more than 20 products, you're aspiring to add more products. Typically a fashion brand, typically a marketplace for accessories, typically you are planning to sell shoes, customizable things. You have your own shopping cart. You've chosen a shopping cart like a Shopify or a Magento or an open cart. You have to ask the payment gateway, do you have the e-commerce plugins? You can immediately click add the hash key or the store ID, and your payment gateway is live within 10 minutes. You don't have to do customizations. The more complicated things you do in customizations, the difficult it is. And always remember there are some gateways or there are some particular shopping carts like Magentos who have lot of customizable plugins. If you add plugins, there might be some disruptions. So you always make sure to have the right plugins and which are compatible with your payment experience. When you are into hotels, retail, ticketing, and you have a very interesting design, e-commerce websites, a lot of merchants and add to cart options, complicated things in the websites. You want to accept credit cards directly on your website because you don't want people to go and navigate to other pages. You actually can either go through an iframe, which means there is a frame on your page, which is like a browser, a JavaScript call, and it looks like as if it's your page. That's typically an iframe. Some of the hotels or some of the ticketing platforms, they want to also capture the card details. So that is typically a direct server to server API integration, which requires PCI compliance, but that is only for businesses who really want to capture card details. And I'm not assuming that you'd like to capture card details from day one. So don't end up spending on PCI level 4 and level 3 compliance. You'd rather go with an iframe, just go with the basic SSL and you are all good to go. Most of the aspiring entrepreneurs have a mobile app and they have either a Flutter or React or some kind of a cross pollination app or kind of unified apps. You typically have to go with the mobile SDKs. So you have to ask the payment gateways, do you have the ready-made SDKs? Don't go and build your own SDKs by taking their APIs and create these wrapper classes, because that is expensive. Most of the payment gateways in this region would have a mobile SDK. Ask the question, test the product with the test instance, and then see which is the best. When you have a subscription and membership product, you need tokens, which means basically you need recurring payments. So you go for a solution where you want to save the tokens and you basically want to have recurring payments. So basically that is typically where you have reference transactions and you have a continuous authority, which means the first time the transaction is completed, the card is saved in a secured vault or a secured server. Next time, when you enter your email ID or phone number, you can actually retrieve the card details and the customer does not have to enter the card details again and again. So that is typically tokenizations for subscriptions and memberships. Tokenization was not available in MIGS, which was the old MasterCard gateway, but all of them today have tokenization by default. Everyone has actually changed the systems. So you can definitely go ahead and ask these questions to payment processing companies on the tokenization facility. And then there are a lot of payment processor companies, aspiring financial services or aspiring companies who really want to create a bill payment aggregator module or a fintech product. I really don't know what all companies are all about, but in general, if you have a particular company where you are a payment processor yourself and you want to accept cards in this particular region, then you can go with a server to server API, but that requires PCI compliance. If you are an international, if your business is international in the MENA region, you can also use a single API which can give you all the alternate payment methods. I'll go through the next slides which talks about alternate payment methods. And then if your products are more into international market, then your processing currency becomes very important. Don't force the customer who is sitting in the US to buy dates in dirhams. Make sure that you have USD or Euro at least, because that is where your conversion increase. So these are the typical APMs. APMs is also called as an alternative payment method, which means anything other than Visa, MasterCard, or American Express is basically an APM. Saudi Arabia has two APMs, Sadad Mada. Bahrain has Benefit, and you have Jordan, which has Jomo Pay, eFawatir. Egypt, there are wallets which are also used like a payment option. It's a closed loop wallet like Fawri, Masari, Aman. And now you also have Misa, which is a card network like Mada. Then in Turkey, you have Troy, Ethiopia, you have Switch, so on and so forth. So typically when your business is launched in a particular country and you really want your customers to accept payments from these particular countries, these are the popular APMs which people prefer. Now, these are the payment options again. Nowadays, you also have seen a lot of BNPL, which is buy now, pay later companies, where a customer can actually select that particular option and the merchant gets the money and the customer pays to the buy now, pay later companies. Most popular ones in this region are Tabby and Spotty and Tamara. So these are the three buy now, pay later companies, and even Visa and MasterCard have the new option. And now UAE also has a new product which is called as UAE PGS, which might turn up into a buy now pay later at some point in time. Competitive analysis is more of what are the main advantages of choosing the right payment gateway. So first is you need to have a merchant data and rich analytics feature, ease to use and instant account creation, self onboarding, which means you can onboard yourself by adding all your KYC and KYB details. And at the end of the day, you don't want to get into a payment gateway which takes you 6 months to give you a live merchant ID. Make sure that the turnaround time is fast and make sure that 5 questions which I told you should be managed. Uh, I just have 5 more minutes. So dealing with cybersecurity, as I told you, when you talk about accepting payments on your website, you always have to ensure that you're dealing with customers' information. Now, most of the times, my recommendation for all the entrepreneurs who are aspiring or who have been in the business is to not accept card details on your website unless you have a valid business case. You always have to ensure that you have the bare minimum SSL. Then you, if you want to accept card details, go for the PCI compliance. Never go for a virtual terminal or a moto mid, which means it's a 2D transaction. Always make sure that all the transactions go through a 3DS, which means there is an OTP which comes to a customer and there is a 3D authentication. The moment you enter the card details, you have to have a payment page which goes, and you have to enter your OTP. Then you also have to understand that the payment gateway which you choose has an in-house technology stack. Don't go with white label payment gateways only because they are giving you at a 10 bips or a 0.2% discount. You'd rather pay more, but always have a reliable payment gateway. Uh, you always have to block blacklisted bins. If your transactions have seen, or you have seen some kind of irregularities in the transactions from particular customers or countries, always put velocity risks and IP rules in place. This is a 2-3 hours topic, but I will just keep it simple. Make sure that your particular line of business, you have to define your ceiling of transaction. Typically, if you are a grocery company, your average ticket size is roughly 150 dirhams. If you see a transaction for 1000 or 2000 dirhams, don't accept the transactions. Make sure that this particular transaction are on hold, and you basically call them and ask them whether you have made the transactions or not. That is basically called as an on hold transaction. You always have to have clear refund terms and condition policy. Please don't copy paste from your competitors, guys. Spend $200. Make sure that your refunds terms and conditions are well defined for your line of business. That's a sincere request. Most of the cases what we see always have a copy paste of terms and conditions from your competitor websites, or even without seeing, you just copy paste because you feel this legal things are not helpful. In an event of chargebacks and refunds, this is a serious issue, and this can even shut down your company. I have seen lot of companies facing this issue. So when you deal with cybersecurity, the first thing is to get your documents right. Create your ecosystem of your own customizable refund terms and condition policies, please. Which banks to choose? As I told you, make sure that you have banks which has more settlement currencies. Always make sure if the bank gives it for free, read the terms and conditions quickly. Ask them, nothing is free, guys. Tell us what you have and give me the list of currencies. And make sure by default you choose 3 currencies at least. Select your processing currencies from the banks, and always don't go with the largest bank, because you'll have an international name, either a X bank or a Y bank from the US or the UK. Make sure that that particular bank is supported in your region, number one. Number two, make sure that this particular bank has an automation and has a good track record on customer support. Always ensure. Don't get into some kind of issues where you choose a bank because of the name and then you face issue because they don't want to respond to you back. And that's all, guys. Thank you so much. This was a quick summary of choosing the payment gateways. To quickly summarize the next 1 minute, the first 5 things what you need to consider is, what are the payments what you want to accept, number one. Number two, your shopping cart needs to have ready-made payment modules. Number three, if your experience is not good, all your customers will never come back to your website. The pattern matching algorithm needs to be done right. First time, the impression should be so good that next time he feels like coming back to your website. So if you make your house good, they will definitely come back again. So the end-to-end experience should be seamless. The fourth thing what I would like to say is the end-to-end flow. from a processing currency and a settlement currency should be defined right, so that you don't end up paying for the extra FX. And the last thing is, make sure that each and every component takes time and you decide after testing one or two particular gateways. Thank you so much. And I would like to ask questions if people have any questions.
Gaurav will actually pick out. Gaurav, you're there?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm very much here. Sorry, let me just turn on my camera. So thanks, Punit, for that session. I think it was extremely detail orientated. I think it just goes to show that, payments is not as straightforward and still has a long way to go to be an automated, seamless process where, today someone has an experience with a digital bank, for example, and they say it's 5 clicks to open an account. It's still a little bit far away from adopting a payment gateway or payment service to that context. And I don't think that's going to change for a while, simply because of the complexities you outlined on cybersecurity, experience, services, the differentiation points within adopting a payments ecosystem for you as a service with an e-commerce strategy is still not automated or as unified yet. It's going to get there. It's coming. It's in progress. So I think based on that, thank you very much for the session. It was extremely interesting, and I think there's a lot more you could talk about. Some of the questions we've got right now, some are biased, some are not biased. But let me ask some of the questions we've got here. For the question we've got from Anis is, what about a payment solution for multi-currency based on visitors' IP and multi-processing currency? So someone comes to my e-commerce website, which has a gateway, but they're visiting from an IP address that reveals them as the United States or Australia, right? Can one payment gateway manage this if they run the service in the region, because you're expecting visitors globally, right? And will it show the currency as their local currency, or will it show it as the local currency of where the business is? So if the business is based in the UAE and I'm buying dates, will it show the UAE, or will it show Australian dollars if I'm visiting from Australia?
It should show Australian dollars because where you are from, it does not depend where you're from. Where your customers are from, that is the most important piece. I mean, it's all about showing him not AED, but rather showing him a global currency, which if you don't have a capacity to accept payments in Australian dollars, you would rather show him USD or Euro. And if he wants to select AED, then it's fine. So typically, when you talk about any kind of websites which are built in the home country, as a merchant, the primary currency is your home currency. So customer from AED will always love to buy an AED. By default, he will see AED. And you also have to show that AED in bracket primary, which means that this is your home currency. When a customer comes across the globe from anywhere and you don't have that currency, try to not show them AED, but at least have a USD or a Euro option. So he will feel more comfortable buying from you.
The next question that we had, I hope that solves that review. The next question that we have is, can you tell us what are the typical types of fraud that one experiences as a service provider? So I imagine this goes into the details with regards to chargebacks and such kind of questions, and which is a very detailed conversation. But in your experience, out of that next maze of a conversation, what are the top typical kind of fraudulent scenarios or transactions that you see coming onto people's e-commerce businesses?
So there are two kinds of chargebacks. One is the friendly chargeback and one is a fraudulent chargeback. And as per your question, what you mean is a fraudulent chargeback. Fraudulent chargebacks are usually occurred when a particular card has been compromised from a particular website. And then this particular transactions have been done on another website. Now, how do you eradicate that is by having a 3DS mid, because the liability always lies on the issuer and not on the merchant. So to answer this question, when you talk about typical frauds, items not delivered, items not in shape. Typically people, usually it happens in service industries when people buy a ticket for someone else. In that cases, billing address and shipping address should be the same always. In that cases, you can actually reduce the frauds. And
Okay.
last thing in the next 30 seconds for this particular question is, when you start adding a lot of parameters, you try to see what are the difficult things. Again, the same thing is refunds, terms and conditions. If they are the best, you can always win the case. So you always have to ensure that your particular things are not copy paste. And I've seen this 99.9% of the times, Gaurav. All my websites, what I have been reviewing more than 20, 30,000 websites. I always see copy pastes,
Wow.
by the way. And I said, guys, spend $1,000 or $200. Ask to create your own terms and conditions.
Hmm.
If you have your own conditions, you're good.
So that's pretty interesting. Have your own unique terms and conditions applied to your type of business.
100%. And your
Okay.
business, it can be similar, but the products are different. This is why you are unique, right?
So I think another interesting question, which didn't come up on the question panel, but it came up in the chat, was do regional payment gateways support B2B wallets? Now, to my knowledge, I have not seen a B2B wallet in the region till date of note, because people are doing bank-to-bank transfers otherwise, but not from a wallet perspective per se.
The regulations have not been set in this particular region for wallets. One is because of the AML or the anti-money laundering policies. The B2B wallet companies typically will not be supported for the next 7 to 8 months more. Unlike when the open banking starts and you have this PSD2 guidelines, where you can start accepting some kind of payments in a different way. And as Gaurav mentioned about the bank to bank transfer, this can be a wallet to wallet transfer in a B2B way. But obviously, at this stage, because of the AML policies being strict and tight, it's a bit challenging for now.
Yeah, I think it's an evolution of the market, right? You're getting
Yeah.
cooperations happening between Saudi Arabia and the UAE on cryptocurrency, which will eventually lead to business wallets. You're getting a GCC framework, which is applying to things like VAT. So
Yeah.
eventually, I think once that framework happens, then you'll have B2B wallets coming up. I don't think it'll be happening just yet.
It's a good talk, right? I mean,
It
we
is.
just have to walk when they talk. So let's see.
It'll come. It'll
It
come.
will come. Absolutely.
But when, inshallah, let's see. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Another question which came up is an interesting question. It says, what are your thoughts on a low single-digit product requiring a monthly recurring charge on the credit card? So what I'd like to look at is, obviously that question has very specific context. For the sake of the audience, I'd like to reshape the question in talking about how do recurring payments happen today on gateways for cards? What is that structure? Typically, how does it work, and how accessible is it for businesses to be able to charge subscription-based charges or businesses? So for lack of a better description, like a Netflix or like Apple Music, where they're taking a fee. How is that a product that's readily available? Is it something that happens already today? How does it work from a setup or a validation perspective?
So yeah, I think that's a pretty good high level thought on the question what Munish asked. So probably Gaurav, what you talk about recurring payments is nothing but a continuous authority. The first time the transaction is captured or authorized, the card is tokenized. In a simple way, the card is stored and then it will be used again and again. So when you talk about a recurring payment, the moment the transaction happens, the transaction has to be charged a percentage. Payment gateways are smart, right? They also make a fixed fee on every recurring payments. Now,
Who
I
doesn't
don't
want
want to
recurring payments?
absolutely. So the core fundamental is the first time the authorization happens,
Hmm.
there is a fixed fee on every transaction. First time you capture the card, the second time the card is already authorized, but you have to capture it again. So when you talk about recurring payments today, it is readily available. And it's a pretty long discussion, but just to summarize it, what are your thoughts on low ticket transactions? Low ticket transactions are the biggest challenging thing because there is a fixed fee. digital goods like Netflix, when you talk about a 29 dirham transaction per month, you are definitely not going to give me a 1 dirham per transaction fee. So you end up charging a specific extra percentage. But it's a debate across the globe that how can you reduce this digital good transactions. Now what you potentially do is bundle this in a one transaction and then divide that in percentages. So there are ways we can come up with, and Munish, probably you can get back to Cecily or ask the questions, and I'll be happy to answer you how you can actually work on a different way, or what are the different ways to figure this solution.
Right, because different entrepreneurs have different products and different services, right,
Exactly.
at different levels. So, why shouldn't it be an accessible product in today's day and age to be able to process low single-digit transactions for a business that needs to subscribe to that,
Yeah.
and wants to make it more affordable on an OpEx basis for people to enjoy a service or a consumer good then, or a business than otherwise, right? We don't know.
Typically charge a customer with a fixed convenience fee, which is not allowed. But if it's a SaaS based or a recurring revenue, you'd rather account that particular transaction on a monthly basis by adding a 50 dirham, 50 fills or a 1 dirham extra. People won't mind when they do a transaction. Most of the people do that, but there are ways to figure this out.
I think in the interest of time, you've spoken a lot about a specific group of approaches, backgrounds, availability of services within the
Yeah.
ecosystem for people to take into consideration when thinking about a payment gateway product or service, or their business, in fact, or how to structure their business when approaching this service. So, looking at all of that, let's go to a blue sky or greenfield kind of scenario and close out the session today. Is, do you see artificial intelligence in the future of payment processing? Now that's a big question, but I think sitting where you are right now, AI plays, or what could be machine learning, it's whatever label you put on it, automated checks, right? I think you're already using that to some extent where you are, right?
Everyone uses this. It's just the new terminology, and probably the role of AI in payments is definitely a very important piece, is because you always have to understand what the customer purchasing parity is. Number one, what are the patterns basically when a transaction happens? Typically this is a segmentation piece where artificial intelligence not only plays a role on the fraud management side, but also plays a role on the authorization side. To give you a quick example in 20 seconds is, you have a Mashreq Bank card, just an example, or a Network International card or whatever card, and you have the same bank. I would always try to understand that this particular website has this specific cards. Then I will recommend that you have to go with the same acquiring bank, because the success rate increases and the cost becomes a bit lower, because the card and the bank are from the same bank. So artificial intelligence plays a very important role. And there is a new concept, if you'd like to read, for everyone, will be DeFi, which is decentralized finance. And you have the smart contracts in place. And typically for DeFi and smart contracts, I would say artificial intelligence plays an important role. If you are even thinking of planning to start something on this particular aspect, this can be run as a SaaS based solution for all the companies to use this product.
I think, Cicely, since you're managing time, we have one more question. Can we take that, or do
Yeah,
we have to
close it
call
with
it
a
close?
question and then a poll, final poll, because I think
Okay.
few people have
All right.
left.
So, okay, just a last quick question is with regards to surcharge, or convenience fee, as it's termed. Where do you see this being allowed, or where do you see it being, restricted in the region right now?
Convenience fee for customers is usually not allowed, I would say, because you cannot charge your fees, because merchant has to bear that cost. But because you have a SaaS based model, typically you add that in your pricing, because that is the only option. But if you want to charge a service fee or a convenience fee, then there are ways where a travel company will not end up paying for 2000 dirham, where his ticket, you're paying for a ticket for 2000 and you end up just making 50 dirhams and your cost is 100 dirhams. So he'll always top it up by adding 100 dirham extra, but not show as a different line item. So if you want to do that as a service rendered, you would add up in your amount, which takes care of a specific fixed fee or a percentage in digital goods. And if your ticket size is high, then you add a portion of percentage in the same ticket size, but never show this as a different line item, because that can be, this is definitely a problem.
Thanks a lot, Punit, again, for your time today. I think it was an extremely informative session, very detail orientated. Thank you so much for the effort you put into sharing that regional data, industry insight, and also contextualizing it to the questions that people had today. So thank you for your time. And I'd encourage everyone, as Cicely said, that there's a poll for everyone to take. We'd be very happy if you did that. And if you have any other further questions, Cicely has put up a email address for people to be able to contact Punit with some more direct questions where he can help out. So Cicely, I'll hand it over to you. And thanks again, Punit.
Thank you so much, Cicely,
Thank
and
you
thank
so
you, Gaurav.
much, Gaurav. Quick question, Puneet. We
Yeah.
have some queries whether you can share the slides. Are you okay to do that?
Yeah, I can share your final version,
Yeah.
Cicely, and probably you can share the slides. No problem.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Puneet. Thank you,
Thank
Gaurav.
you so
Again.
much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.